So to scale to over 1 million a month from scratch, it's obviously a huge task, but I think once you break it down into a few areas, it's not as daunting as you think that it would be. So we're going to start first of all with product. So obviously you're going to need a product, and that will be your hero product, right? But before we get into that, let's talk about markets. The best market by far to start a brand in right now is the States, for one reason only. It's super low sales tax. So I would go ahead and put your market to be in the US of A, our friends over the pond. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't do big numbers in other countries, but the UK is particularly hard to do because of VAT. There's a lot more setup that needs to go on there. And when it comes to countries in Europe, again, higher sales tax than the States. So we're going to start in the States, and that's one of the things that I think a lot of brand owners forget about, and they don't realize actually, just because I live in Croatia or Spain, it doesn't mean that my business needs to serve those customers. So market is something that people massively kind of undervalue when they start their brand. So you're going to need a hero product. So what are the components of a hero product? Does it save someone time? Does it increase confidence? Does it have a HPV, which is a high perceived value? So if you look at the jewelry market, if you look at Rolls-Royce, this is why all of these companies exist, they are purely a HPV company. So we want to potentially save the customer time, increase their confidence, have a high perceived value, and also another way that you can sell to somebody is to save them money. Okay, so time and money, huge assets that people want to save. People will pay a lot to increase their confidence, and high perceived value kind of links into the confidence as well. So when you're choosing a hero product, your product ideally should have at least one, if not two, maybe even 3 or 4 of these components. The more components that a product has of this selection, it just means that you're going to have a bigger chance of some sort of success, especially if we're looking to scale it to big numbers. So once you have your hero product and you choose this product, we are now going to look at putting that product into a niche, okay? So the reason that we put it into a niche is to essentially take ourselves away from the competitors. I was about to say customers then. But we essentially take ourselves out of broad markets. So broad markets are places like Amazon, Walmart, MyProtein, Gymshark, all of these brands that look to serve everybody. When you're starting a brand, you don't necessarily want to serve everybody. You want to serve the people that you can jump into a niche where the product hasn't been explored yet. So if we are to take an example of, let's take clothing. Not that clothing is the best thing to start with, but if we went for clothing, this is very easy to niche down, okay? So we could go into gaming clothing. We could go into golfing clothing. We could go into streetwear. And we could go into fast fashion. Or we could look at something like high ticket, which would be suits, for example. Now, don't necessarily take this information and go ahead and run off and create a clothing brand. Probably actually not the worst. It's probably not the best place to start. But you could look into supplements, you could look into skincare, you could look into makeup, you could look into gadgets, all of these products. There's so many products out there, and one of the things that people say all the time is, oh, well, these products are saturated, these products, the market's just full of them. How am I going to sell? You're going to sell by niching down. That is the way that you are going to take whatever your hero product is that does one of these things, or maybe does multiple of these things, now that we understand why people buy, and we are then going to attach a niche to it so that we essentially either create our own market or we enter a market where the competition is very, very small. We spoke about previously nootropics and how you could take that idea of a nootropic supplement, which is super, super saturated. I don't like the word saturated. It just means people buy it. And then we can take that into the gaming niche, or we can take it into the entrepreneurial niche, business owner niche, and then just create the product for that specific type of person. And when we sell this product, we do not want to sell the features, okay? Now let's say that you are selling a toothbrush. Now this toothbrush might have an LED screen on it. It might have Bluetooth. It might charge in less than an hour. It might do all of these cool things, and it may have some weird blade, hyper technology, whatever you want to call it. No one cares. No one cares that it does all of these things. What you want to sell is the benefits and outcomes. Okay? So instead of saying to somebody, hey, here's this toothbrush and it's got a Bluetooth whatever and an LED screen, I would rather sell it to somebody by saying, hey, make sure when you kiss your girl or your guy that you have fresh breath. So you could say, give a kiss that they'll never forget, or maybe you could even come from an angle of like, give them a kiss that they will forget or whatever, because you could play on the idea of bad breath. You're taking a pain point, a problem, and then you are taking that and saying, hey, you're not going to have that with this product. I would rather sell any product with a slogan that kind of makes a joke or a pun or pushes to either a pain point or highlights a benefit and an outcome, or creates that dream scenario in somebody's head that when they kiss somebody or when they start their day, they want to be fresh, right? They do not want to kiss somebody and have stinky breath. Nobody wants to do that. So you don't necessarily need to sell the features. Obviously have that on your product page, but you want to sell the benefits and outcomes. So everybody, please take a photo of this before I wipe this off. We'll get into the next section. Okay, cool. Has everyone got that? I'll see you at the back. Okay, cool. Now that we understand what makes a winning product, how you can sell it and what market you can sell it into, how do we then scale this? So we are going to need traffic. We're going to need people on the website. And we can get into how do we identify what's going on with the entire marketing funnel. So this is how we're going to do things. We are going to start, as we have so many marketing channels that we can go from, we're going to start with the biggest player of them all, which is Facebook. Now, the reason for starting with Facebook is because with most brands, this is the North Star of your business. And what I mean by that, and we'll put a nice little star here, is that your business is driven primarily by growth on Facebook. As much as people might be on TikTok Shop, they might be on Google, they might be on whatever ad platform it is, Facebook is the best place to scale to get to that 1 million per month, right? Because of one reason. You can go cold here. So what I mean by that is you can hit customers for the first time, completely unsuspecting, and if you can get a good return out of here, let's say a 3x, then you are going to have a business, because if you have a 3x on Facebook, is it's going to be very easy once you're spending a good amount here to then add Google in and pick up some of this warm traffic. Because when people are seeing your brand on Facebook, they want to be able to Google it. They might search it. They might be searching certain keywords that are affiliated with your product. So first of all, we're going to scale Facebook, and then we're going to add in Google. And you can also add in TikTok D2C. Now, this is not completely needed. TikTok D2C is a platform that I think once you're at serious scale and you just want to add some more ad spend, I would go ahead and add this. So actually, for a second, we're just going to get rid of that to just make things simple. So very simply put, we're going to allocate ad spend. So to get started, we're going to allocate 80% of ad spend here. We're going to allocate 20% of ad spend to Google. Now, how do we acquire a customer cold and get that 3x return? So what we're going to do, and I'll go through this very quickly because I know we've gone over some ad stuff today, but very simply, we are going to have a load of different ads in one campaign, and I'm going to teach you exactly how to scale it. And then we're going to get into offers. So what we're going to have is we're going to have one campaign, one ad set, and then our ads, right? And in here, we're going to have a CBO times 1. We're going to have a broad ad set. And then we're going to have up to 100 ads at one time. What do you mean, Josh, we're going to have 100 ads at one time? You do not need to start with this. You can go ahead, put up 6 ads, make sure that you have a couple that are cold, then you have a couple that are middle of funnel, so your unboxings, your reviews, and then you're going to have 2 bottom of funnel, which would purely be testimonials here, okay? So that's the ad setup that we're going to go with. And once you have got a good return on ad spend out of these, you have some winning ads. If you're not seeing some winning ads when you start off with 6 different ads, go ahead and add more ads in. But one of the things that we need to remember is, as brand owners, it is very easy to get stuck in your marketing and not concentrate on your actual business. Now, if somebody said to me, Josh, you can have bad ads, a bad website, but you can have a great product and offer, or you can have essentially the flip reverse, I would take a good product and a good offer every single time. The reason for this is because this is what sells your business, right? The product is what people are there for, but the offer is super important as well. So a lot of business owners, they have their hero product and they just go ahead and scale 20% every few days that they see a good return on Facebook for an extended period of time. And if you're thinking, well, what does that look like? Typically 5 days of a consistent good return on ad spend on Facebook and Google, you're good to go ahead and spend another 20%. You might see a bit of a dip at first, you probably will, and then you just keep that running until you see that return on ad spend rise again. So I want to get into the offer stuff because this is what makes the biggest difference to your business. So most people spend 90% of their time on the marketing side, which is completely wrong. You should be spending 90% of your time on the business side, and then what you should be doing is just let your marketing, which is essentially you there with a digital megaphone saying, hey, this is my product and this is my offering. You should let the marketing just essentially just accelerate the actual growth of the business. So with that being said, and I hope you're all keeping up, I know this is a lot, we're going to take this hero product and we're going to build other products around it, okay? Survey your customers and find out exactly what products these people want and add them to your business. Now, most people will say, oh, but yeah, we want to scale. Trust me, do not scale too hard until you've done this, for one reason. AOV, okay? So once you have a higher AOV, you have more profit per order, and that means that you can outbid your competitors and you can essentially just crush the entire market. The whole game should not be, oh, well, do I do this ad change or is it this creative or whatever? No. If you want to scale to huge numbers, you should be focusing on AOV and profit per order so that you can spend more, so that as your return on ad spend dips, which it will as you spend more. I've spent a ridiculous amount of my money and other people's money on Facebook ads. And I can tell you now, Google ads, TikTok ads, whatever, as you spend more, that return on ad spend over time will dip slightly. So we're going to make up for it by increasing the average order value and the profit per order. Therefore, you can keep scaling. You can keep scaling. And as you scale the ads, you should be fundamentally scaling the business. Now, when it comes to offers, so I'm just going to take some water for a second. When it comes to offers, these offers will up your AOV and your profit per order. Very simply put, offers are there to make your customer feel stupid for not buying more. So how do we do that? As long as you've got good margins, I would go for a buy one, get one at 50% off. That looks like 56% off, brilliant. Or a buy two, get one free, okay? Now, the reason for this is because both of these, I would split test them, but both of these make the customer feel stupid for not buying more. Now, you have to think about your brand image. If you are a brand that's super high end and you don't want to discount your product too much, that's fine, just do a 10% discount, or make sure that your free shipping threshold just encourages people to spend more. By the way, if you're doing one of these offers as well, whatever the cart value is of, for example, the buy two, get one free, you should make your shipping threshold around that price as well. So if it comes out to be £42 or whatever, or $52, just make your free shipping threshold over 40 or 50, right? It doesn't have to specifically be that. Just apply it to whatever price your product is at. Now, the reason we do that is because we're giving people a good reason to buy more here, but now we're making people really feel stupid for not spending more. So now we have an understanding of why people buy, how to scale, and I cannot say this enough. Please scale your products and the amount of products you have as you go ahead and scale the business, because eventually you're going to get wrecked and you'll be in a position where you're doing 500K a month, but you're doing it at 8% margins, right? That's no good for anybody, because if a rainy day comes along or the season changes and ad costs get more expensive, you get wrecked whilst also turning over 500,000 a month. That is not good. So once you have everything in place and set up, also as you're adding in these other products, do put together bundles. Put together a discount for buying more. You can figure out with your own margins exactly what that discount would be, and also apply it to your own brand. If you're a high-end brand, do not apply a huge discount on bundles. But if you're a discount-based brand, you're happy to do that, you've got good margin, go ahead and do it. And then, we haven't even talked about emails and SMS, I've just realized that, but you also want to be adding in your emails, your SMS along the journey, and we can do a separate lecture on that. In fact, I know I've already covered this in a previous lecture, so if anybody wants that video, just go ahead and let me know. But once you get to the 500,000 per month, you really want to start adding in, or once you get to the point where you think you can't scale too much further and you've done everything that we've spoke about today, you want to start to look at other platforms. So you can then add in TikTok D2C, right? You can then add in TikTok Shop, right? And you can add in stuff like Snapchat, You can also go a bit more cold when it comes to your advertising, when it comes to Google. But from my experience working with brands and scaling brands to, in a very short amount of time, ridiculous numbers, over $1 million a month. Sometimes you find that businesses, they have a bit of a sweet spot. And what I mean by that is that sometimes when you're doing such volume as a brand, it is very hard to figure out how to manage the business. Do you need investors? Do you need people to come in? Do you need to take out loans? All of this stuff makes everything complicated. And for some brand owners, it's actually better to just be running at that 500,000 a month, small lean team. And that'll be my final point before we get to the end of this. But it's just something to bear in mind that sometimes scaling to those numbers will leave you, unless you are very experienced, with slimmer margins than you started with before, a bigger team, more stress, and then you're thinking to yourself, okay, we've got no margin, which I would always make sure you have at least, you need to be in the regions of, okay, we could drop revenue or profit by 10% and we would still be fine. That's something to remember as well. I know I'm throwing a lot at you guys, so please note this all down. And if you want to, just go ahead and ask me some questions after. But it is interesting to me. There's so many brands that are doing these huge numbers, and actually they were more profitable, more happy overall within their personal lives, business lives, when they're actually doing smaller numbers. So scaling to over $1 million a month is achievable. I've done it. Of course it's achievable, but I was about to say it's achievable in a short period of time. You can do this within 6 months. You can very aggressively jump ad spend to ad spend. Once you're adding 20% to a budget that's already 40,000 per month on Facebook and Google, you'll notice that the jumps start to get pretty aggressive. But I definitely think that you should understand who you are as a business person before you go ahead and do this. And I think for any brand, I know some of you guys are already doing those numbers, some of you guys just getting started, and some of you guys are at the 50, 100,000, $250,000 a month. So I think you need to think about where you're at as a business owner. Take everything that I've said here. Please go ahead and ask some questions. I know we've been through a lot, but fundamentally you want to understand, why do people buy products? Then once you understand that, you can get a product, you can niche it down and essentially create your own market. Then we're going to create some offers to up average order value. We're then going to make sure that we have the highest profit per order that we can get before we scale. Do not make that mistake. I know it's tempting when you're scaling and you're like, okay, cool, we can just keep making more money. But that ROAS dip is coming for you. You want to make sure that your engine is very well oiled and is running perfectly, because realistically, if you have everything in place, you have those extra products, you have bundles, you have your emails, your SMSs, your WhatsApp, which is another conversation. I would take a look into WhatsApp. Some really cheap kind of advertising that you can do that just bumps things another 4 to 6%. So I would take everything that we've looked at today. Of course, ask as many questions as possible. But when it comes down to it, fundamentally, it is just building a good business and then letting the advertising do the talking for you. I want to kind of wrap this up by saying most business owners are so focused on the marketing that they completely forget that the business is the reason that they were successful in the first place. If you work on the business, your marketing will work for you. And a lot of people get it the wrong way around. They get, a couple of products on a website and they just say, oh, it's not working, it must be the ads. Like Facebook hates me, Google hates me, it's just not working. Unfortunately, the feedback is from the market that your product and your business sucks. That's the truth. But now that you know exactly how you can build a successful business that aims for these two things before you do anything else, AOV and PPO, which is profit per order, if you are constantly aiming for these two things, it is very easy in a market like the States to obliterate everybody and scale very, very quickly. So if anybody has any questions, I will take them now.